Hi, I'm Andy from Float My Boat, and today we're doing a real quick knock-up of a single V's and single blocks. Typically this would be used for a small jet ski or something like that, but a rib or any sort of narrowish boat would be perfectly good on this. So we're in a showroom today rather than on the side of a dock. It's no different really. The lovely thing about being inside doing this is the temperature's all controlled, there's no sun beaming down on the docks. But what's really good is if you can do this on a morning, try and do it on a morning in the shade or somewhere where there's consistent temperature. What you don't want is half the dock in the sun, half the dock in the shade. So just for this purpose, it's in the showroom, which is much nicer for us, but we're just going to show you how to make a single V's with single blocks. Right, at the moment what we've got here is we've got a few single V's, which we call single V's, and we've got a few single cubes. When we're doing this, as always with any dock you do of ours, any dock from Float My Boat, the most important thing is we get a 3 and a 3. You do not do. You make sure everything goes exactly the same way around. So if I'm putting the 1 here, the 1 must always be here on every single dock we do. So the next one that comes in must have a 1 here. The next one that comes in, hope you're starting to get the point now, 1 must be here. If the 1 is anywhere else, it will not work. You must have 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. When we get the next cubes in over here, it's exactly the same thing. We want the 1 in the far corner, 1 in the far corner. What I'm going to do now quickly is just put this together, just so we've got a rough layout of everything, what we're going to be doing. One's in the corner, 1 is in the corner, 1 is in this corner, 1 is in the corner, 1's in the corner. A crucial thing when putting a dock together like this, and I know we're cutting into the video to explain this, but the reason it's important is because the logos are not always perfectly placed on every dock. These logos are put in each time a block is made. They're made with a logo position put in by hand. So because of that, you can occasionally get logos in different orientations. If you look at that one at the end over there, then we've got them this way, this way, this way. Hope that makes sense. So typically, the logo should always be this way around. However, you may well find you get the odd logo this way around. So please, please, please don't always think the logo is going to be absolutely perfectly placed. The most important thing is we have a 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you look at all the orientations of these, we haven't worried about the logo, we've worried about this here. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, there would be a 2 here, 3, 4. 1 would be here, 2, 3, 4. Everything on the 1, 2, 3, 4 goes the same way on this whole dock. Don't worry about the logo positions. They can occasionally, with human error, be changed. But the block is made with the 1, 2, 3, 4 already pre-positioned into that block. So because of that, they never change. The only thing that changes is the blocks are made with a pre-made logo that we put in. We sometimes brand a logo to another company. That's the reason why. Here we can see 4 single cubes. All 4 single cubes have come together. If I remove this pin, we have the orientation of 1, 2, 3, 4. The reason it's so important to have this orientation correct on every single lug is because the way the lugs actually all fit down together. If the orientation is always the same on every single block you do in the pontoon or the dock you're building, what you end up with is 1 being the highest, 2 being the second highest, 3 being the third highest, and 4 always being at the bottom. What this allows you to do is obviously when they all push together, they all fit neatly all the way up and all to come together nice and tightly. When they come nice and tightly together, they end up sitting very nice and tight
between the bottom of the non-return barb and the bottom of the actual spacing lug. If we don't have them this orientation and some of the blocks are wrong, what we can end up having is something like a one on top like this. Now if the floor's uneven, this type of thing can happen, and what happens then is when this lug tries to go down through here, that small spacing difference here can't compress all the way up, and this space here is very, very tight, so you're always going to get a little bit of this, which is just going to be a little bit too far on this lug to click nicely in underneath here. So it's really, really important that we don't have this situation happen. The 2 must never be above the 1. What you can also happen is the top of these surfaces will never sit flat. Now on an uneven ground, you can get a situation where it feels like this looks more normal, but you must always, when putting these together, really try and consider 1 is always the top, 2 slides underneath 1, 3 slides underneath 2, and 4 is the very, very bottom one. If you have that, everything will come together. As we can see here, not only is all the surface flat, but also this lug will punch down and connect everything up nice and easily. Very, very important. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Typically, we'd finish off with a dock like this, a small boat, jet ski, however it is. You could, with the one in the right place, fill that blank in with another one of these. Often that's not actually necessary. The weight of the engine is at the back, the boat is typically heaviest at the back, so having a couple of blanks towards the bow end or the front of the boat isn't a big problem. 2 good things about that: you can get access underneath the dock if you put additional supports or additional balloons or anything like that underneath there. Alternatively, as I say, it makes it a little bit cheaper and a little bit easier to build. So the weight at the front of the boat is not really where the weight's the flotation or the buoyancy is needed. It's more towards the back. So that's why occasionally we leave a block out at the front. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to make it nice and easy by simply building it like this. What I'd typically do if I was doing a dock like this, I'd start at one end, and I'd normally start at the, what should I say, the bow end of the boat, which effectively is normally the solid end. When we've got blue docks just together, we use large pins. When we've got the small small docks, we use small pins. If this was a double dock, we'd be using one of these, but because it's the single small dock, small V, we'll be using those. To get these in, it's normally nice and easy, the big pins, good stamp on it, and they'll go straight in. If that was a problem, you can use a rubber mallet, but quite often on those ones, you get it roughly in place, you can usually push them straight in. Obviously, once we're all done, we'll be turning these into place, but just for the time being, they're good as they are. When we are talking about these pins here, they can sometimes be a bit more difficult to put through. We'll stamp through if you want them to, but if they're more difficult than that, what sometimes you can do is you can use a large sort of heavy piece of wood with another piece of wood to actually bang them through. So you'd put that like that, you'd stamp it through. Most of the time, if I'm doing this myself, I put my weight on there like that, and then I'll hit there like that. Try not to use a piece of wood like this, smash it directly onto the top of the pins. It can damage the pins. A rubber mallet or a rubber pole or something like that, fair enough, but if you're using a large hard piece of wood like this and you're stretching straight on the plastic, especially if you miss it and hit these, you certainly don't want to start cracking or damaging the surface of this. They're pretty tough, so you'd have to be pretty violent to do it, but better to put something on the top first and hit that than directly with that. I'll just continue to finish off the pins down through there. I'll show you what I mean by putting one of the pins in using a bolt. On these ones here, typically, I put that like that, I'll put that like that, I'll walk around, so I don't fall through it, I'll do it like that, And this is where, with a little bit of weight, that goes nice and easily, saves the bottom of your feet. If you've got a big dock to do, you could be smashing out a lot of pins like this. So by using a nice heavy piece of timber like that, onto another piece of timber, it just makes the whole process nice and easy. Two more of these. Obviously, always checking that these are all in the right location. If this was to move apart at all, I would obviously be very, very careful, making sure I got 1, 2, 3, 4, and obviously 1 being the highest, 4 being the lowest. It's difficult to see when they're all together like this, but you can normally work out roughly where things are. It is very important. 1, 2, 3, 4, and also that the 4 is definitely the top, the bottom. The 1 is definitely the top. 2 is underneath 1, 3 is underneath 2, and 4 is underneath 3. Very, very important. Don't worry about where the logo is. The logo is not the most important thing. The logo should all run the same way, but the most important thing is 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, let's get these last ones in. What you can find when you're doing this is when you're pushing this down like this, you might need someone to stand on these here. What can happen is when the bottom lug here is pushed down, it pushes the lug down rather than the dock up. So if you see here, this one here is pushing down, but because this is the 4, what it's doing is it's going through, and rather than going through the last 4, it's actually pushing the 4 down, which is then pushing this lug up. So rather than clicking through, this is why we need some weight on here and here and here. And what that does is it holds that lug up. So when the lug's not being pushed down like this, it's pushing through the lug. I hope that makes sense. So that there, at the moment, is not going in particularly easily because it's wanting to push this lug up by basically hitting that's happening rather than that's happening. So what we just need to do is get that on there again. Graham's going to stand on this quickly. And pop. Now, as you can see, that's nice and through, but we had to keep the weight on this edge over here to allow that lug there to stay nice and firm, so it popped through rather than tipped it up. Hope that makes sense. Right, last couple. Pop that one in there. Pop that one in there. I don't know why that's got 2 holes, but please ignore that. That's not, you won't normally get one like that. That's a special one. That's through. That's through. Everything's now in place. Again, we're going to twist these into place so they're all lined up eventually. They don't have to be particularly twisted one way or the other, but what we're trying to do is get these bobbles here into the sides here. If you look in the side here, there's a we call it a fixing point here. And if you look at these lugs here, if you look at this lug here, on the edge of this lug, there's a bubble. That bubble, when it's turned at 90 degrees, or so it turned at about 90 degrees, will click in here and here. So we want this to actually go click and click. So that bubble there and that bubble there effectively end up here and here, which if we look on this one over here, will be fixed into that point and that point, so basically can't untwist themselves. Please note, turning these is quite difficult sometimes. So it's not the simplest thing just to click these in easily. Sometimes if they don't go in the first time, they don't twist the first time, don't worry too much. By the time you move it around a bit, put it in the water, you can then click them in at a later date, because they don't always click in instantly when they first go through. Right. The last things to put on are these nut and bolts. You'll find on one edge of your dock, where a 1 and a 4 go together, there'll be a big space. In that big space is where you put your washer. The washers have obviously a circular shape to them, but they have a small flange on one side.
That flange is designed to go in, so again, the washer can't turn out. If you put it in like this, you can see it turns all over the place. So what you need to do is make sure that arrow shape there goes into the dock. So we put that together, we push it in like that. By having that flange in there, it means it's in the right shape. So when we put this through, and again, we've got these lugs here, which will line up with there, and that'll stop it screwing around. And then we've got our nut and bolt under there. Please note, these have non-return barbs, so if you do this up really tight to start off with, these barbs will lock in. You'll feel under here, there's little holes. These little holes, you can see under there, lock into these non-return barbs here. So what we tend to do is, until it's in the water, we just gently do these up. Make sure you don't cross-thread this, because if you cross-thread it, you won't be able to do this. And then once they're up high enough, what we're not trying to do is click it in, because once it clicks in, you won't get them out again. So just do it up enough. That would typically be enough to get into the water, and then we can tighten it all up afterwards. And we do that all the way around. Once it's in the water, or once we want to get it really tight, then we'll do that last little bit of movement there. But at the moment, that just gives us a little bit of movement to be able to get the rest of the dock built. Pops in there. That pops down there. Just whilst we're here, if we wanted to put a fender on here, we do different fenders like this. Move these up right now. These fenders have two sides. They have a low side and a high side. If you put it on the one side, you can see on the low side there, it's got a nice flush finish. If we spin it the other way around, it's got a low finish. Just make sure there's two sides to them. So on one side it will fit one way around, on the other side if you don't want that gap there, we do it that way around, and off we go. With these fenders here, what we simply do is we use a large pin. And it goes on, making sure it's the flush side. Pin goes in. And here we go. As I say, we're going to turn these 90 degrees. Same with these. If you wanted to put a cleat on, we can use a cleat on the side as well. That's to fit the fender on the side. I will just show you just what's up here. As we talked about these pins, the point of these pins is they have a non-return, where it's the big pin or the small pin, they all have this non-return barb on them. Yep. The point of these non-return barbs is what you're looking to do is, as you can see, when that goes through there, the pin will go through. But once we're through, we need to turn it 90 degrees. So effectively, as you see, I can't push it through now, but it'll be the same principle once it's through. You can't then pull it out because that barb clicks on underneath them and then it can't come out. So effectively, we'll go through like that, but once it's turned into place, we click it through, turn it into place, and then suddenly that 90 degrees barb won't allow it to come out. That's the reason why we need to turn all these 90 degrees. So if I turn it to that point there, it can't come out. Turn it back to that point there, it can come out, because effectively we're turning that from there to there, can't come out, back into there, can come out. You can use either pins like this around the side if you wanted to, or typically for everything around the side. So typically for everything around the side now, we're just going to use nut and bolts. They're much easier to use. Also, the advantage with the nut and bolt around the side is effectively once this nut and bolt goes around the side, push that through there, we can tighten that up there, we can drop a rope through there. If we use all the other ones, you can't actually tie off by coming through there. If you do use a nut and bolt through the side, what I suggest, and you're putting a rope through it, what we want to do is you probably want to just cut
a small amount of that off, just shave it down. If your rope goes all the way down, all the way up, you'll have a weak point. However, if you shave that up to there, and you cut this off here, it'll be a lot tighter, obviously just because the leverage of that will pull through. It doesn't really matter if you do or don't cut it, it's just a small, what we suggest doing. Let's say, to finish with these, be through there, twist them up. There's no need to make them all the way up until you get in the water. I hope that's enough to understand how to build this. Obviously you would finish those all the way around. You twist all these into place, but I also want to take it apart now. I don't want to leave the showroom. So by the time that's all twisted into place, all of that, these are your fixing points here through the sides there. It should be all ready for you to effectively drive your boat or your ski up onto. If, however, your boat, or for some reason your ski is very low in the water and your nose or your toe point or anything like that is hitting the solid surface here, there is a way that effectively, if you drill holes in the side of these, you can float the front leading edge of your dock to lower it into the water. The lower you drill your hole in the side of these, the lower or the higher this is going to sit, because obviously you're only letting so much water in. So if you want it really deep in the water, you drill your hole up here. If you just want to take a tiny bit off the height of this, drill your hole down here. What most people do is they'll start with a hole down here, then another little hole, then another little hole, then another little hole, and each time you drill that hole, it'll just go lower and lower and lower in the water to allow this just to sit a little bit lower. The great thing about that is, most of the time, by the time the boat's up there, your fulcrum point of the boat is simply going to be normally around the middle towards the back. So once you're actually on the dock, the fulcrum point being further up the dock means your rear of the dock, or your stern, will sit like that. It doesn't really matter if the dock sits in the water a little bit, because what you're worried about is where the fulcrum point and where that weight comes through the dock. That's typically, as I say, normally about where the pilot sits or the captain sits. So as long as that point is past where you've sunk it, you'll get up on nice and easy, and the rear of your boat, stern of your boat, where the engine will eventually come up and then lift. So the first little bit here being sunken doesn't tend to make a huge amount of difference to where your boat eventually sits on top of the dock. Hope that helps. As I say, it's only typically for boats that have a very, very low toe point or possibly nose in this area. Small jet ski, very small rib with an anchor point very, very low. Anchor point, toe point. I'm Andy, I'm a boat. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense and helps you build your dock wherever you are in the world. Thank you, goodbye.